let us all do we can to build a better future.
As we know, there has been a massive weather disaster in Texas. I could sit here and tell you what's going on, but you already know. You've been paying attention to the media stories. You've been checking this out on social media. What I do like to point out is that this is exactly the sort of thing that we talk about a lot on Hardlines Media, the decline of infrastructure at the same time that climate change is happening. And we started talking about this back in 2017. And we were talking about how we were going to start seeing these increases in disasters and up against an aging infrastructure that nobody wants to invest in. And this is the sort of thing that happens. Now, what I'd like to point out, for many of us who live in colder climates, we don't necessarily understand what it's like in the warmer states. They do not necessarily have heating systems like we have. They don't have insulated houses. They don't have shovels. They don't have appropriate snow tires. They don't even have cold weather clothes unless they're in, or salt, or unless they're, they don't, we all have our warm sweaters, we have our jackets, mittens. They don't even have that sort of thing. In fact, I was looking at a store, it's a furniture store in Texas. The owner opened it up as a warming shelter, and people were bringing bags of warm clothes for people to pick through and take for themselves. So they didn't even have warm clothes because they don't necessarily need it. So this weather disaster, when this happens in places like Texas or Florida, we can go he. No, it's actually not that funny.
No, it's not. It's not funny at all.
It's not funny at all because people don't have the normal resources that we have to deal with the cold. Their homes are not designed to have snow on top of them. We've already, our roofs here in Illinois are built to handle snow, but even here we're having some problems with the amount of snow that's been dumped on us. So this is a serious situation. As many people have pointed out, this has already become an area of left-right polemics. We have people stating that this is the fault of the Green New Deal, which has never been passed. They're saying it's the fault of green energy systems, even though a lot of the fault is on the pipelines that were never insulated, even though Texas was told to insulate their pipelines. And the fact that, of course, Texas has its own energy grid to stay off the federal grid, which means that it can't share powers from other states. And, of course, now President Biden has had to authorize FEMA to come in and to provide assistance. So I guess the feds are helping out here.
Yeah, can I just add one thing? Yeah, one thing here real quick. Look, the people who are responsible for this disaster are those that didn't properly build the correct infrastructure for the Texas Energy, because, like, again, there's no proper insulation. I mean, this is a failure on those who did not have the foresight to see that, hey, look, sometimes Mother Nature chooses to show her vindictive side. The real victims are the innocent working class families, the young children that are still in cages south of the border. I mean, everyone right now is suffering. And I just want to say this right now on Hardlines Media, because I'm going to be doing a live stream later tonight. But Cenk Uygur, I don't know what's up with that vindictive tweet that you made towards Joe Rogan, but maybe if you get your head out of your butt, you realize that there are innocent people that are suffering down there. Now's not the time to be a little princess. Now's the time to show some of that infamous progressive compassion that you like to say on your show. Why don't you show it? Instead, no, you had to be a punk and make a little tweet like that. Oh, I'll be talking about it later tonight, folks.
Schadenfreude is not progressive.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And there's nothing funny about what's happening there. But I also want to point something out. This is becoming, we're having these disasters a lot. They're happening frequently. And one of the things that I predicted back in 2017 is that as climate disasters would be on the increase, people would be losing their compassion. People would have compassion fatigue. And with nobody stepping up to improve the infrastructure, to improve disaster management in these areas, people were going to be left to languish with nobody willing on the private sector, the charitable sector, to come in and start helping. We've already got, I remind you, a global health emergency that is going on at this time. And so there's that as well. There are compounding factors here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how all of this is interconnected on this show. But this is something we were talking about back in 2017. I fear we are seeing it, and I'm not liking it at all.
So it was interesting. So I was listening to a number of the news articles and stories and such before we got here today. And one thing I thought was interesting is, well, it's first of all, everyone's finger pointing. I love this state of sovereignty is like, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. It was him. And the guy over there pointing is like, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything wrong. It was him. And then that guy's like, I didn't do anything wrong. It was him. And they're just going in this wonderful firing circle, which I think the left always gets accused of doing. But there we go. Texas is doing it as soon as they run out of power. And someone needs to take responsibility for that act now. I was listening to some of the people that were actually talking about like the wind turbines, because that's the big thing. Laney already alluded to that they're basically saying, you know who's really at fault for this? Those dumb environmentalists who convinced us to make solar panels and wind a big part of our energy production. Whereas, again, as Laney pointed out, it's mostly the natural gas lines that are freezing up. That's kind of the main issue. And the wind turbines, sure, are not all working. But I think the ratio seems to show that they're putting in more effort than the natural gas is, which is supposed to be what Texas is known for. And it was interesting listening to one of the guys talking about, one of the experts, and they were saying, look, most of the stuff in Texas, like Laney's point already, is that it's designed for really high amounts of heat and heat dissipation. So like the wind turbines are designed to not get overheated. They're not designed to not freeze. The gas lines are designed to, I guess, not boil over, not get too much pressure, but not freeze. And also to Laney's point, people have been saying to Texas, hey, you know, this global warming, this also another way to frame it is global volatility due to said warning sort of causes weird things to happen, such as freak blizzards in places where it doesn't snow. Maybe you want to retrofit all your stuff to deal with that, especially since, as Laney also pointed out, the power grid, you have the Western U.S. power grid, you have the Eastern U.S. power grid, and then you have Texas. And because of that, and they're actually doing this other thing, that part of Texas is on the Western power grid and part is on the Eastern. All the ones that are on the Eastern and Western power grid have not lost power. It's just the Texas power grid that has lost power.
Wow.
I also want to point out that something that happened, and many of you have heard about this. There was a town called Colorado City in Texas. The people in Texas, the residents had no power. They didn't have running water. They were having to haul in buckets of snow so they could flush their toilets. And they turned to a community Facebook group. The mayor, Tim Boyd, who has since resigned, began screaming and saying, no one owes you or your family anything. I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. He told people that they were lazy and that the government nor the power company owed these people anything. Never mind, people are paying utility bills.
Reminds us of Comcast.
So they can, so they can get, so that they can get their services. They're paying taxes, so that emergency departments and maintenance crews and whatnot can be at their disposal. And of course, he ended up resigning. He claims that his wife got fired. Now, if that's the case, that his wife got fired because of this, it's not right. Marrying a jackass should not be a fireable offense. But
nepotism, it's going away.
But but this is the kind of attitude that you see in a lot of people. Well, how dare a person want a handout? Never mind that people are asking for the services that they have paid for to be there for them.
Yep.
And this is the kind of attitude you see. And this is just one example, but it's a very typical example. Well, you want everything. You want free stuff.
That you paid for.
That you've paid for. It's a astonishing attitude, but not one that is at all surprising. And of course, everybody's been getting a good laugh about it over on Facebook. I'm just very sorry for the unfortunate people in that community.
The good people. I want to acknowledge a YouTube super chat. Absolutely. We got $5 from Max D. I keep remembering that funny Enron Texan who quirked, let them freeze in the dark sometime back. It's hard not to smirk. I would say, look, I know a lot of people are laughing and pointing fingers, but I think that the people who are really hurting right now are innocent civilians.
The vast majority are people who are just trying to go about their lives. They were not the decision makers. And in fact, the reason why we have a federal emergency management department, why we have state, local, county emergency management departments, is their understanding that there are issues that are far bigger than any individual or family or even a small community could reasonably be expected to deal with. When you have a massive snow dump someplace, here in Chicago, we've had issues, and we are used to this. We know how to deal with this, but it strains systems even in areas that are very used to this sort of thing. And this is where this idea that it's every man, every woman for him or herself is just utterly bizarre, because there are forces far greater than individual human beings or human groups.
Yeah, and it's also like, it's very funny because, like, what seems to be the real problem, like, if you want to point a finger, it's Texas for decades saying we don't need no federal regulation or support, even though whenever a hurricane hits, they're like, FEMA, can you help us? Or in this case, they're like, hey, we don't have power because we are not connected to the grid. FEMA, can you help us? So it's they have this ability to put themselves to act like they're this independent nation that's an island. But we know what happened when Texas was an independent nation. They went bankrupt basically immediately, and they needed the federal government to bail them out. And it always seems to be this way. Texas says, we're going to do what we want. We don't need your help. I think even someone said that someone had a bumper sticker that, like, drive 90 miles an hour so that a Yankee freezes. It's like, the world's a little more, you're not an island. Yeah. You're attached to a continent whose climate is shifting. You've isolated your grid. Your stuff froze because you didn't insulate it, because you didn't believe in global warming, but it's green energy's fault.
Yeah.
And again, to Lainey's other point, the people that are the most affected by this situation are the people that had the least to do with creating it. As far as I can tell, and this is just something I've heard, I haven't actually seen, people can tell me if I'm wrong, though, it seems that the wealthier neighborhoods have been able to maintain power in the rolling blackouts far more consistently, as well as their own backup generators, than the lower income areas of the state. And the people who are the least able to deal with these problems or pay for the fix are the people at the least. It's the same sort of thing we talk about when we say, like, Republicans do this. We're like Republicans in the power structure. In this case, Texans in the power structure.
Yeah, and I have heard this as well, is that some of the rolling blackouts are perhaps not as rolling, or they're not rolling in a random pattern. Yeah. They're rolling in a very specific pattern. Again, some people do have the ability to have generators, do have backup generators. They are expensive to buy, in many cases, and then of course you have to be able to get the fuel for those generators as well. So it's some people will have that, but it's not something that's practical for most households. And one of the things also to keep in mind is when people's pipes are freezing, they're bursting, that can cause horrendous damage to homes. So we're all, this is not something that's going to go away once it warms up a bit. This is going to be the lasting problems. You're going to have problems with mold, water damage. It's going to be pretty severe. Not good.
Even already, in some cases, because of how pipes burst, which if you're in northern climates, you sort of understand this intuitively, it's kind of even worse when it thaws, because all these, if the entire pipe is blocked, you may not even know that the thing burst until the water starts flowing again. And I've already seen enough videos of just apartments just billowing out water from a second floor onto the ground, causing giant ice sheets because a pipe burst. A pipe bursting, and they're going to be, again, because Texas is not going to have enough plumbers to deal with this all at once. There's going to be waiting. There's going to be things that are wet. There's going to be mold. So by the time all this gets developed, and all the plumbers are able to go through and look at this stuff, there's just going to be mold everywhere, which of course is going to increase the sickness rate of people. And people have to pay for the repairs. But I guess that mayor's like, well, if you pay for the plumber, he doesn't actually owe you to fix the stuff if you just paid him.
Not.
We also got another YouTube super chat, Wit to Wit, $5. Is Joe Rogan talking about the problems currently plaguing Texas? He lives there now and could help. I am not aware.
He's on Spotify. I don't even know what he's doing anymore since he moved.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything, but I sometimes will catch it. My roommate listens. So I will check in with him and see what he has to say.